Season 2, Episode 12 is titled Phoenix. Similar to the prior episode, Mandala, and the circle of life we saw there with Combo and Holly, this episode is all about the idea of rebirth. Originating in Greek mythology, but also having various analogues in all kinds of different cultures, phoenixes are reborn when they rise from the ashes of their predecessor. In this episode, we see the death of Jane, the daughter of a man who tried just about everything to help her. But we also see the birth of Holly, a birth that Walter missed entirely because of his own very shady dealings. For now, sure we can all say, well, yeah, he did miss her birth, but he was securing her future, which is all very true and all very valid. I mean, he did make a boatload of money. Except for, the rest of the series. And so with this title of Phoenix, and Walter obviously seeing what happens to Jane, the implicit question is, what kind of life is Walter truly securing for Holly, and at what cost? And on a similar note, upon the completion of the deal with Gus, Walter very much joins the elites, and despite his repeated claims of this truly being the final deal, business will be booming. From the ashes of their quaint little humble RV, something infinitely grander will be born. In terms of less artsy interpretations, Phoenix is also Jane's place of birth, so that might also be an example of this cyclicality of life of sorts. And an even more explicit reference is the Mars rover that Walt and Donald briefly talk about.
You found water on Mars.
With this season's overarching theme being unforeseen consequences, this seemingly simple conversation about what is literally a different planet somehow ends up being one of the heaviest of the entire season. They never knew each other, they never shared much about themselves, and the conversation is about a robot on literally Mars, yet somehow, someway, their actions and their fates are largely intertwined. And so, the episode being titled after this bizarre connective thread that is the Mars rover somehow seems fitting. It is a totally far-off thing, but it is this one conversation that somehow connects everything. And in a even more literal sense, water is also the precursor of life, so that also kind of connects to Holly's birth, because they found water on Mars, well, Phoenix, water, birth, life, all of this, right? Kinda makes sense. Moving into the episode itself, we open with shots of an abandoned motel, the meeting spot for the sus Gus deal. And right away, note the weird-looking fluffy thing that has an uncanny resemblance to the pink bear. If you allow me to overanalyze for a little bit, one could call this the foreshadowing finally catching up with us, with this being the first ever time something like the bear appears outside of the black and white flash forwards. This deal right here, and the crazy amount of money that they make, is what sets off those final few dominoes leading up to Jane's death and subsequently the plane crash. And so, that all-seeing eye of the bear finally makes its appearance in the present day. The rest of the cold open continues on that same chaotic and contradictory spiral, with Walter practically leaping out of his car, only to suddenly feign normalcy as he calls Skylar.
Oh, thank God. Is she beautiful?
What I always found really interesting, though, is Walter throwing away a spare tire to create a hiding spot for all the money. I always thought this was a bit of a missed opportunity, because in my mind, this could have become the discarded gas mask of Season 1. A small thing that is left behind in Walter's chaotic rush that would come back to bite him. This whole deal obviously goes completely against Walter's preferred approach of slow and methodical. There is no plan B. He literally had to break down Jesse's door, and he has no preparations whatsoever on what he's actually going to do with the money. He literally just throws away the tire without a second thought, when he could have just as easily, placed it in the back. Why would anyone check there, and even if they did, why would they care? If anything, just tossing it completely is even more sus. Obviously, he could never be traced with just a single tire, so even if it was found, it wouldn't really mean anything. But much like the mask that only vaguely pointed back to his school, I think it could have been another oversight that eventually comes together to build the profile that are Heisenberg's activities. Realistically though, I think this is a rule of cool thing, and tossing the tire just adds to the chaos of it all, while also having some vague symbolism about the circle of life and the experiences Walter is throwing away for the sake of his deal, namely Holly's birth. Still though, even if it wasn't like the DEA, I wish we got a cold open or something of a random person just finding this perfectly fine tire, and that becomes a omen of sorts. With the deal settled though, Walt arrives at the hospital, but is promptly surprised by a certain someone.
Congratulations, Walt.
Sorry, I didn't see you here.
Oh, Ted drove me here, thank God.
Certainly overanalyzing here, but also note the color contrast between Walter and Ted. Just like Skylar, Ted's shirt is a light blue, the color of purity and loyalty. Whereas when Walter pulls in, he is of course in his Heisenberg jacket, and his shirt too is dark. Ted very much is involved in fraud and whatnot himself, and he will function as a slippery slope of sorts for Skylar's own moral erosion. But when push came to shove, he was here when Walter was not.
You okay? Is everything okay?
Everything's okay. Just wish you'd been here.
Honey, is there anything that I can do for you? Anything at all?
I absolutely adore this back and forth that we see throughout this cold open. Usually when we see these Walter shady dealings, his normal self is the default. As in, we see him do something very illegal and then quickly revert back to his quiet self. But with this cold open, it is the criminality that is the default. We open with him already lying about what he's doing as he secures the deal. He then briefly reconnects with Skylar, but quickly reverts right back to Mr. Moneybags. I've got no idea what kind of instrument is used here, but I think it perfectly conveys that cold and calculated, yet extremely bold approach that we are seeing with Walter. The thrill and the chaos is all but gone, and all that remains is just raw power. And with that, roll intro. I'm never playing this intro ever again. Like seriously, they keep locking these videos in copyright jail. Are you serious? Moving into the episode, we open at Jesse's, with Jane waking up to her dad's calls about the rehab meeting.
Somebody broke in.
This is still up there with my favorite line deliveries in all of Breaking Bad, because yeah, sure, someone broke in while we were literally asleep like one step away. Huh? Why would I be worried? Also, look at Jesse's gamer PC. Dude has a windowed case and everything. That being said, Captain Cook Gaming might not be gaming that much because, for some reason, bro has one of the PCI shields just taken off, but there is no GPU anywhere. Then again, this is 2009 and he's got primetime World of Warcraft, Diablo 2, Team Fortress 2, Left 4 Dead, and a dozen other legendary games he can run perfectly fine already. So, swings and roundabouts, I guess. I don't know why the PCI shield's not there though. Gamers aside though, Jesse of course wakes up and quickly pulls his best Captain Jack Sparrow impression as he sees the aftermath of Walter's raid.
Why is the vent gone?
Before we see the culmination of Jesse's continued confusion, we got to Jane's rehab meeting where, right away, we see the pain and guilt on her face.
I guess I don't really care. All it'd take is one friend and I'd be out ripping and running again. But I made it. I really made it.
The 18-month chip suddenly feels like it's burning a hole in her palm. As she listens to this man recount his own struggles with finally reaching the 1-year mark, she feels like an imposter. She doesn't deserve the chip. She doesn't even deserve to be here. Just like the man said, all it takes is one friend and he could relapse, and that's exactly what happened with Jesse. Just one bad day, and that 18th-month chip she carried around became worthless. Suddenly, the getting clean part and her relationship with Jesse become two incompatible things that are tearing her apart. As we cut to them at the cafe after the meeting, Donald too notices that she looks tired, asking what's going on with her.
Working on this really complex new tat.
You know you need to avoid those type of
I
people.
know, and I do.
The most tragic part of this for me was always that Jane is not even really lying here. Whatever kind of assumptions Donald might have had about her parlor's customers, clearly she never relapsed in those 18 months. And when we meet her in the show, at least outwardly, she seemed genuinely happy and fulfilled with her job. Presumably, the whole mural in her room was painted by her, we saw her chilling outside and working on the designs, and she wanted to go to museums to look at art. It was all something that she enjoyed doing. And even her first vibe check of Jesse was also 100% correct. She immediately knew that he was shady and wanted to avoid, quote-unquote, that kind of person. Everything really was lined up in a way that she would lead a happy and fulfilling life. But then she allowed Jesse to stay, and well, I think I've yapped about unforeseen consequences as the theme of Season 2 plenty enough. We also get some vague lines about Donald's job not having enough people and how they're hiring even those with basically no experience, which is, of course, a bit of a Chekhov's gun. Had they had more trained people available, he might have taken a bit more time off after Jane's death, and the plane accidents might have been avoided. But alas, unforeseen consequences. What's much more interesting, though, is what he asks next.
You seeing anyone?
No.
What about that guy next door?
I think it's basically impossible to really say what, if anything, Donald thought about Jesse, but considering how timidly he's approaching the subjects, I don't think there's really any ill intent here. Like, even if she said, yeah, I'm dating that guy, I don't think he would outwardly tell her to just, like, stay away from him or anything like that. I think this was just a dad being a dad and wanting to snoop around to make sure his daughter is safe and happy. But that is of course tragic in its own right, exactly because Jane would exploit this fatherly forgiveness and gentle care. That is where we leave them for now, but I think it is an excellent scene to set up that tragic culmination that we see later in the episode, especially considering we see Donald for all of like 5 scenes. The way he is characterized, even having little to no screen time, and how all of that then bounces off of Walter's story where he too is having a daughter is just insanely well done. We interrupt this program to bring you an important news announcement. As you might be able to tell from my not-so-subtle ranting with the intros, this series has been an absolute nightmare when it comes to copyright. So, just to make sure that we're all on the same page, I really recommend joining the Discord. I've started posting my internal schedules, and whenever the series inevitably gets blocked again, I'll let all of you know what's going on with it, because I have a feeling that this is going to be a regular thing. As usual, everything is linked below. In the Discord server, you can pick what you want to be notified about, whether it's second channel stuff, live stream stuff, and all the other things I do, or it's just these updates where, again, inevitably something goes wrong. All that being said, let's do something fun and I'm going to foreshadow chaos. It is currently the 3rd of February, and this video should be going up on the 4th of February. So, let's see whether or not that happens.
Oh, beat ya. Why everybody is doing just fine. You junkie imbecile.
Last night, somebody broke in my place, yo. I got robbed. I mean, say something, man, all right? Yell at me or something, come on! Mr. White!
This scene would be another classic Breaking Bad goof and a Walter crash out, if it wasn't for Jesse saying,
Yell at me or something, come on!
Which is just sad. We have talked plenty about their rocky but actually very meaningful relationship before, but with this, Jesse knows he screwed up, and he is completely and utterly lost at what to do next. He is practically a terrified kid calling up a parent and only getting the "I'm not mad, I'm disappointed" in return. He was already spiraling over Combo's death, so now losing everything they worked for almost makes his death seem meaningless. He will figure out that it was Walter, of course, but the "yell at me" or something definitely hits hard. Returning to Walt's house, though, things are getting even more bizarre as Hank pulls up with
Los pollos hermanos?
Oh yeah, seriously. You gotta try it.
Much like the pink bear, I think this is meant to be another haunting symbol of an almost all-seeing eye constantly watching Walter. Though all of these things may seem unrelated, Walter is already entirely surrounded by the consequences of getting involved with Gus, to the point of them literally showing up at his dinner table. And on a similar note,
So I was thinking more of, alarm system. Yeah.
Wow, that sounds expensive.
Well, yeah, but,
Walter has gotten a taste of that money, and he's already jumping at the opportunity to spend it. The water heater was straight up broken, so replacing that, yeah, makes sense. But him now thinking about these alarm systems and whatnot is a little bit comical. Like, bro, put up a fence and live out the rest of your days in modest comfort. You literally already won. You've got the money. But of course, this is Walter, and that was never going to happen. Which, by the way, obligatory tangent, there is quite a bit of research about people who suddenly come into money, think like inheritance or winning the lottery, and the effect that has on their propensity to spend. The popular media narrative of people immediately spending all of it on random nonsense does have some truth to it, but it is largely overblown and is quite rare that people just go bankrupt. There's a bunch of other really interesting findings, like how it is actually their neighbors' risks of bankruptcy that go up because their lifestyle now tries to keep up with the lottery winners and their increased spending, but all that is not super relevant here. What is quite consistent, though, is the sudden wealth syndrome. As the name implies, people who come into sudden wealth can have difficulty managing these large sums of money, which in turn actually makes them unhappier. Some people become isolated because no one they knew before can keep up with this new lifestyle, which then spirals into a bizarre sense of guilt. Others are largely paralyzed by the money and just refrain from making any decisions at all, while paradoxically, the anxiety of not doing anything with the money just keeps gnawing at them. And of course, there are some that do start these huge impulse spending sprees that they themselves would almost certainly agree are not wise. And because Walter is basically the poster child of a narcissist, he is very much the latter. First, it was things they needed. Then, it was things they arguably needed, like, yeah, the security system a bit over the top, but I guess, I mean, sure, why not? But then, it was sports cars. Because fun?
Money-wise, we'll manage.
What, you gotta do like a print press in the garage, turn out 50?
And of course, Walter's little money talk backfires as Skylar starts talking about returning to her job, which for Walter is a huge point of insecurity. He wants to be the provider, and to be fair, he did provide. Except he can't really spend the money, and he can't really talk about the money, and he can't really do anything with the money.
Do you want to see something? That's right. Daddy did that.
Okay, my DIY construction man IQ is around room temperature in Celsius, but isn't it really bad to leave fiberglass just exposed like that? It does have the inner cardboard slash paper slash whatever layer, I don't know what that is, so it's not like the worst case scenario, but still, flinging it around the face of a literal baby surely isn't safe, right? Like, okay, maybe not safe, but not totally healthy. Like, I am still paranoid from that one time I helped my grandpa do insulation 15 years ago. It's not fun. You shouldn't be flinging it around like that.
You took the stash!
Congratulations, Einstein.
Like I dropped the ball or something, and you're the one who took it!
Shut up. Like you dropped the ball? Heroin?
Man, what I do on my day off is...
off! We were on call, you junkie. On call for the biggest deal of our lives.
How much?
480,000. Saul's cut is 20%.
If I gave you that money, you would be dead inside of a week.
And this is where we pause for a moment, because why care? The biggest deal of their lives is done. He got the money, time to close up shop, and never talk to Jesse ever again. But no, suddenly Walter is playing Papa Walter, who doesn't even trust Jesse with the money. In part, I do think this is him very clearly tipping his hand and saying that we will keep cooking and that it is not over. But an equal, if not greater part of this, I think really is him wanting to make sure that Jesse just doesn't, well, die. We'd see as much when he throws all caution to the wind and physically pulls Jesse out of the level 10 drug dungeon. Underneath all the constant toxicity, he does view him as someone to be protected.
Selling testing kits at the drugstores. If you are clean, I will give you every last dime. You have to depend on the kindness of strangers to get high.
I guess old Vince really likes his irony, because just as Walt tells Jesse that he's going to have to rely on the kindness of strangers, we cut back to their house, and Flynn has cooked up a charity website, aka Walter is literally relying on the kindness of strangers. Pretty much everything we just talked about with Skylar mentioning her returning to her job applies here, but even more than that, this goes all the way back to Elliot's offer of a job, which Walter too considered pity and charity. The idea of being quote-unquote lesser and begging for money just decimates Walter's ego and immediately accelerates his need for laundering and otherwise legitimizing the money he's made. He wants them to know that he secured their future. He wants to lead all of them into the garage, or whatever that is, and do a grand reveal of all these stacked up bills just like he did with Holly. But obviously, he can't do that, and so he is just left molding out.
It's charity.
Why do you say that like it's some sort of dirty word?
Also, Walt Jr. is canonically going to become a writer or something, because look at how well-spoken this little dude is. Shout out to the writer who thought throwing in like a or something makes it sound like it's being written by a teenager, because this is most certainly not being written by someone who is 15 years old. The Comic Sans does go hard though.
I have so much cash on hand that I actually count it by weighing it on my bathroom scale, and yet I can't spend it.
And again, even when it comes to solving the issue of money laundering, Walter doesn't want to take any of the simple solutions because he just cannot accept that it happened to him. It has to have been him earning that money. At this point, the facade of trying to secure a life for his family is basically being held together by duct tape because, like, bro, you have a solution, yet you don't use it because your ego is too fragile.
It cannot be blind luck or some... No, I earned that money. Me!
Zombies.
After a bit more negotiation, Walter does seem to settle on the donation idea, but for now, that is where we leave them. Returning to Jesse, unfortunately, he is very much not kicking the big H, and is still crashing out at Walter. That is already very bad, but it gets infinitely worse when he accidentally lets it slip that old Waltberger owes him a few dollars here and there.
480,000.
Huh?
What?
This is where the worst of Jane starts to come out, and the manipulation she has learned over the years and years of lying to her dad will be weaponized against Walter. Which, speaking of, we cut to Donald, who is at the meeting, and Jane is not there.
Dad, wait! Dad, it's not what it looks like. Dad, no! No, stop! Dad, stop!
You're going back to rehab. Today. Now. 18 months. You have been clean for 18 months, Jane. Why? Why do you do it?
I backslid, okay?
This is one of those scenes where all of the analysis kind of just boils down to everything is bad and everything is sad. Jane clearly has a lot of very deep-rooted issues and is a victim in all of this. But she also lies with pretty much every single word that she says and is constantly manipulating the only person who is trying to help her. Donald, on the other hand, really is being quite aggressive and is likely not helping the situation. But on the other hand, he has tried everything, and again believing her is what would tragically lead to her death. If he actually had just called the police and, yes, made them arrest his own daughter, maybe she would be alive. The sheer lengths people will go to rationalize and excuse the acts of their loved ones is just on full display here. He wants to believe her and to trust her even when he knows he shouldn't. And even Jesse is right in the middle because he is both an enabler for Jane while also being a victim of Jane's downward spiral. The rehab wasn't his idea, it was Jane. She wanted to help him, but she backslid in the first place because of Jesse. Of all the relationship dynamics we see in the series, I think this one is one of the best when it comes to capturing the messy, messy reality of people. Everyone here has flaws, and everyone has blind spots. Everyone here is a victim to a degree. And yeah, everything is just kinda sad.
Last time I went to rehab, all my houseplants died because you didn't water them, so...
The sheer level of manipulation here is just downright insane. To start guilt-tripping him about how he apparently let all of our dear little houseplants die is crazy, and again, it's all just bad. Like, she clearly needs help, but how do you approach that when she pulls something like this? How can you ever make an adult do something they don't want to do? If they don't want to be helped, how do you help them?
You meant all that?
I just think if we had enough money, nobody could make us do anything.
She goes from wrapping her own dad around her finger to convincing Jesse to blackmail Walter in the space of, what, 2 scenes?
Hello, Walter White.
It's Jane.
Really has been a long time.
Jesus, get somewhere where you can talk.
Told you about the money.
He told me everything.
I think it's also worth dwelling on Walter for a bit, because even when he has no leverage whatsoever, I mean, Jay can literally just spill the beans whenever she wants to, Walter still puts up a fight. He is dressed in all black. This is very much the locked-in Walter fighting for what is basically Jesse. When he mentions them getting clean, he hits a nerve for Jane, because, like we talked about with the classroom scene in Jesse, this is Papa Walter, and we just saw how Jane deals with her own dad. She will gladly push a few buttons to get what she wants, and with Walter, all she has to do is list off who he is.
You wouldn't really go to the cops, would you?
What is it really?
I'm not the kind of dude who rolls. I mean, he's my partner.
I'm your partner.
Jesse knows this is wrong, and he doesn't want to harm Walter. They are both very important to him, and at this point, he is being pulled in 2 completely opposite directions. Also, this shot of Walter is really, really cool, especially with the stark contrast to Skylar putting Holly to sleep. It's just all very cool. Also, the elephant on the TV might be the elephant in the room, as in, why is Walter chilling when Jane is threatening to expose everything about him? Alternatively, because the elephant is depicted as alone, while the whole scene is about Walter thinking about his family, the scene could also be another manifestation of Walter's choice between his family and the money he already has, versus trying to mend his relationship with Jesse and trying to get back into cooking.
Not you. Jesse.
Jesse doesn't even look him in the eyes, simply stumbling to the door and almost mechanically reaching for the bag. He doesn't want to do this. But like many times before, where he followed Walter's plans, Jane is the one running the show now. And on a less serious note, like, I'm sorry, the little smile she pulls here is actually straight up psychotic. Like, look at this.
I guess you don't.
Like, bro, Gus has nothing on Jane. That little smiley alone, it's scarier than Tuco, Gus, and, I don't know, Hector put together. It's crazy. But the final scene here is just beautiful. Walter tries one last time, saying, "You're not seeing straight," and pay attention to Jesse's eyes. He is constantly looking down, ashamed of what they're doing. But when Walter calls him out and says that he is making a mistake, he glances up, and for the first time in the scene, there is emotion. You could pretty much write a big "please help me" on his forehead as the doors slam closed. This is a far cry from his crash out in the classroom or even to Jane privately. There is no resistance or desire here whatsoever. He doesn't really care about the money, he just kind of wants this whole feud to be over.
New Zealand, part of Australia?
New Zealand is New Zealand.
New Zealand, that's where they made Lord of the Rings.
Well, that didn't last long. Seeing the money, I guess, did jolt Jesse awake a little bit, understandable. But I do find it funny how they're talking about basically a fantasy life with 400 grand. Like 700K in today's money. An insane amount for sure, but I don't know about fantasizing about a life where they filmed Lord of the Rings and that they're not going to do anything. But I guess this was 2009, and people still had hope. You know who didn't have hope, though? Yeah, me and Vince.
But first we gotta get clean.
Yeah, we can do that.
The final scenes of the episode take us back to Walter, who is swung by a bar to clear out his head a little bit. And it's here where we get the fateful meeting between Donald and Walter.
3 stores I've been to so far. Not one of them have it in stock. All right, no, I'll just keep looking.
Well played. You found water on Mars.
The whole Phoenix Marscraft thing and being reborn we already talked about. But their conversation then drifts to Walter's baby daughter, with Donald mentioning that he too has a daughter, but just the one.
So any advice?
Oh, no, not really. Just love them. Just, yeah.
I love information asymmetry in stories so much, because to Walter, none of this means anything. It's just a nice dad being nice. But for us, he probably feels like he shouldn't be giving any advice at all, considering what just happened with Jane. He tries loving her and helping her, but it keeps blowing up in his face. So what kind of advice can he give? But Vince said, wait, I've got one more in me, because Walter then talks about a nephew he has. One which just so happens to be the other mysterious father's daughter's boyfriend.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I do know what is best for you, so listen.
You have been clean for 18 months, Jane. Why? Why do you do it? Family.
Yeah.
First off, despite the two of them being complete strangers, the image that Walter describes obviously evokes the same exact thing. This is the explicit and personified form of those unforeseen consequences. Two people unknowingly describing the same exact thing. And then with the family thing, note that Walter isn't just lying. He doesn't immediately just nod along and say, yeah, family. No, he stops, thinks, and only then agrees. We already saw a form of this with the episode Down and Jesse sharing breakfast with Walter, but this right here is Walter truly acknowledging their slightly messed up father-son relationship.
Can't give up on them. Never. I mean, what else is there?
And here, their stories diverge, because for Donald, this meant giving Jane a little bit of space. He gave her another chance on her terms. It was his form of love, care, and trust. He doesn't want to be the bad guy or to force her to do anything. But Walter's takeaway is very different and equally understandable. He realizes that he needs to get through to Jesse before it is too late. He doesn't want to give up on him, and keep in mind that unlike Donald, he knows that they have a lot of money and they could just straight up disappear. There is urgency for Walter, and so we immediately cut to him already pulling up at Jesse's. Once again, leaving his real family waiting and mirroring Jesse's appearance at his house. Donald blames Jesse for ruining his daughter, while Walter blames Jane for ruining Jesse. And that then takes us to what is easily one of the most disturbing scenes in this entire show.
Jesse.
Jesse, wake up. Jesse, wake up.
For a brief moment, there is this odd sense of melancholy and beauty as Walter watches over them. An ambient music guiding the scene as he sees the two of them embracing each other, but then he sees the remnants of the drugs. He tries waking Jesse up, but he is completely non-responsive, with Walter then looking on in horror and despair as he picks up the needle. The scene is not hateful or angry or annoyed, it is primarily just regret and helplessness. How can he help him, and why does he care about him so much in the first place? But suddenly, the music takes a turn, a darker melody fading in as Jane starts to convulse. The sheer breadth of emotion we see him go through here is just mesmerizing. He jumps to save her. For all her faults, he's not going to let a young girl just die in front of his eyes when he could do something. But then he pulls back. A darker side of him starts to wonder which is the lesser of two evils, and the calculus works out in a way that Jesse might be sad, but at least he'll be back on Walt's side. And so he watches the entire hauntingly long minute of her just convulsing and grasping for breath over and over. Each moment, each time she gasps for breath, is a choice that Walter makes. He is disgusted by what he is doing, afraid of his own inaction, afraid of how far he himself could go. This isn't the kill or be killed as it was with Crazy or Tuco. This was an innocence. We see a tear roll down his cheek, the thought of not saving someone's daughter surely burning a hole in him. But after another moment, he composes himself, and the emotion drains from his face. Vince himself described the scene as Walter's almost Jekyll and Hyde fighting for control, a inner turmoil of what is best for Heisenberg and what will let him sleep at night. Clearly, the calculus falls in Heisenberg's favor, and Jane's gasps fall silent. And with that, that is Phoenix. I think it's fair to say that this is one of, if not the most disturbing episode of Breaking Bad. Like, yeah, a bunch of very messed up stuff happens later, like the prison scene, and there's a bunch of kids involved later as well, which is obviously all very bad. But I think with this, it's not the action that is disturbing, it is rather the inaction of Walter. And that somehow seems so much worse to me. Making a decision is one thing, but staying there and making a decision every single second not to do something, for me, that seems so much spookier. And yeah, this episode, whenever I'm rewatching the series, is definitely one where I'm just like, oh man, Walter. And you know what else is very disturbing? Because these people are so kind to give a goofy goober like me money. Yeah, that's right, our YouTube members and patrons who I want to give a massive thank you to. And let's also give a warm welcome to the newest members of the team: Big Nose Errol, Michael 67801, Unsighted Shadow, and what does that say? What am I supposed to read? But yes, without you, there'd be a whole lot less of my rambling, so seriously, thank you. Other than that, I want to say thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a great day, and hopefully, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.